In January, NYSE-listed HSBC unveiled its 2025 Healthcare Venture Report, which provides a sector-by-sector view across the biggest trends in biopharma and health tech. I spoke with the report's author, John Norris, managing director of HSBC Innovation Banking, who shared which themes are receiving the most attention. Take a listen.
When we're looking at the private venture healthcare arena, the major theme that I saw in 2025 really was the emergence of AI across all the different healthcare sectors, and not only within health tech, which is using AI to just help in get processes within the healthcare system better, but it's also within med device with surgical robotics and brain computer interface. It's in biopharma with drug discovery and development. And it's just a very interesting area where the tools of AI are really starting to find their footing in the healthcare world.
All right. And what are some use cases besides what you've mentioned for AI in that sector, those sectors?
When you think about artificial intelligence and computational biology, it's just a way of leveraging machines to do a lot of the background work. And what's really interesting is there's so much data out there. And the question is, how can you take that data in a methodical way and actually increase or decrease the time it takes to do a lot of things? And we're really seeing that on the biopharma side with tools and also drug development, where you're coming up with assets that have never been developed, just leveraging the power of artificial intelligence. Now, the proof is still in the pudding. A lot of these things are still really early stage and maybe just finally getting into human clinical trials, but it's definitely a big theme, and we're seeing a lot of capital invested in these companies.
All right, that's right. We are seeing healthcare, the healthcare venture market gaining momentum again. Besides AI, what is driving that momentum?
A lot of it's related to the exits that we saw in 2025. It was a good year overall because, one, especially in biopharma, we saw a lot of M&A activity. And not only did we see private M&A activity, which is really important for the venture industry, but we saw a lot of companies that have gone IPO, let's say 2019 to 2024, finally get some great data and then get acquired in the public market. And that's super important because not only does that return money to the companies and the private investors, but it also gets money back to these specialist biotech investors that invest in the public market and allows them to then re-inject that money back into the private venture market. So I think the exit environment is such a huge part of what's driving sort of the resurgence in what we had seen as like major headwinds in the market in the last couple of years.
So that jump in investment activity that we've seen in 2025, how significant is that increase? And what does it tell us about investor sentiment heading into 2026?
Yeah, I think it shows that we've sort of had a pause in the headwinds that we've seen for the last few years. I think we felt pretty good early in 2025 coming out of some of the healthcare conferences, thinking that we've maybe hit the low in the bottom of the downturn. But then we had tariffs, and we had FDA strife a little bit in the market, and that pushed us back into a little bit of a conservative atmosphere. I think in Q4 that headwind sort of made its way to more of a neutral status, and I wouldn't say we have a huge tailwind behind us, but having sort of a neutral headwind has really gotten investors to refocus on getting money invested in early stage venture backed companies. I think it was a very conservative atmosphere in 2024 and 2025, but towards the end of this last year, we started to come out of that and see a little bit more aggressive numbers. Not necessarily what we'll see as we look at the overall numbers in 2025, but it's certainly going to be a big factor in what we're going to see in early in 2026.
And you mentioned, John, those exit markets like private M&A and IPOs finally reopening last year. How important is that for restoring liquidity and confidence in the venture ecosystem?
It is a huge part, because I think when you look at the very largest exits that you see within private venture, a lot of them are driven by companies that go public and then perform really well. And so I think there's a couple things that we have to be cognizant of. And one is valuations that were so, let's say, aggressive in the last few years. So actually, in some of these IPOs, we're seeing a down round to get into the public market from what the last private post-money valuation is. But in essence, it's okay. It's okay to sacrifice a little bit of valuation for getting into the public market, because then there's your chance to perform. And if you perform, either drive revenues, or as a biotech company, you get great data in your clinical trial, that's when you start to see the surge in value in the market caps of these companies. And that's when a lot of times the acquirers come knocking. And so that's really what we're seeing. Getting into the public market is so important, but it's hard to get in there. And what we saw, even though IPOs are down versus what you want to look at in 2021, which was the height of the market, we're seeing positive momentum there.
Thanks, John Norris, for that interview.